Mona is a second-generation Holocaust survivor. I am a Jew who grew up in the United States, learning about the history of these things but never touching it. Becoming part of the family that had these wartime experiences that were horrific gave tremendous meaning and drive behind what I do.
My father, Jack, he was a Holocaust survivor, originally from Warsaw, Poland, and he was my best friend and my mentor. And he really taught me everything about life, love, family, and gave me a real sense of Jewish tradition, which we carried on in our home today and to our children. And he really had a passion and a love for Jewish life.
This was a fellow who grew up in an affluent family in Warsaw, and the right-wing extremists, known as the Nazis, swept into Poland, and he luckily escaped into the Soviet Union-controlled portion of Poland. But because he came from an affluent family, the left-wing extremists who ran the Soviet Union looked at him as public enemy number one, and they sent him to the gulags in Siberia. So in a camp that Mona's father went to had 400 people in it, 40 people were left at the end of the war. The rest died of starvation, murder, or worse. What he taught me is that the extremes on both sides are always going to be having their knives out for the Jewish people. And we have to be really vigilant, and we have to be aware, and we have to build those relationships with all communities. And that's why we feel the JCRC is important. And that's part of what drives our values and our involvement in the Jewish community. That knowledge, that history that Jack brought with him.
To help keep my father's legacy alive, our family is building a children's center in the name of my father Jack's house with the Hampton Synagogue. And we will be having a Holocaust learning center there, amongst many other things for children, and a Holocaust memorial.
And I know that Jack would have loved this because it's really all about moving the education and the history down to the future generations so that the Holocaust lessons will be learned and we will never have a repeat. Well, we do almost everything in philanthropy together. Mona and I just naturally found important causes that we believed in. And because we had been successful in our careers, we found ourselves in a position where we could actually make a difference. With our children, our goals have been, and I hope we've done well at this, to instill that same sense with them. We see ourselves as role models that we hope our children emulate so that they can continue to make a difference for the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and America. Mona and I feel very deeply about the U.S.-Israel alliance and the U.S.-Israel connection. We spend much of our time trying to championing the cause of Israel in the United States. The JCRC has a vital role in doing that, in building relationships with other communities, exposing them to the Jewish community, Jewish values, and there's no better example of a Jewish community and Jewish values in the state of Israel. I was contacted by one of the professionals over at JCRC, and she told me that there was an opportunity to sponsor the Celebrate Israel at Eisenhower Park, and I thought it was a terrific idea, and I jumped at the opportunity. Anything that can help Israel and Israel's image in the United States is something that both Mona and I care deeply about, and a concert such as this could engender such goodwill. We thought it very important. This is what we do. Whether it's my work at Rambam Hospital or APAC, or today in the JCRC, or the UJA Federation, or the City of David Archaeological Park. These are things that are protecting our heritage, our community, and our relationships, just like the JCRC.
I mean, there's so many things, but the most rewarding for me of all was my children were being honored by Yad Vashem for their gift giving, and to see my children being honored and having my father on stage in our family was the highlight for me. And my father felt, he was so moved. For him, he said it was a highlight of his life, because he never felt that he never even thought that he would have a family or that he would even live. For him to live 99 years and be honored for the Yad Vashem event, for me I was beaming. I was so excited.
I think that was probably my highlight as well. I remember getting the call from Mona's son, who had been on a mission with Yad Vashem, and everybody was making commitments as to what they were giving. Although it was way beyond his capacity, he made a very, very substantial gift, but got the ability to pay it out over 20 years. So he was saying two things. Number one, I understand the need and the amount that's needed. And number two, even though I can't afford to give that money today, I'm committing for the rest of my life to make sure that I make that payment. And to me, that was one of the most meaningful moments, because it said to me that all the work that we've done and all the role modeling that we've done is paying off.
Agreed.
So the way I look at it is there's 7 or 8 billion people in the world, and there's 15 million Jews. If you grow up with the knowledge of how Israel came to be, and you grow up with a traditional Jewish background where you've learned the history of our people from the beginning through today, then you'll understand, as I understand, that I feel my obligation to stand up and defend the Jewish community here in the United States, Israel, and do what I can do to make my country, the United States of America, stand in a strong alliance with the Jewish community here and in Israel. We've done what we think is expected of us as Long Islanders, as New York Staters, as Americans, and as Jews. And so we are very active in our Jewish community. I think that the entire community is a community of leaders. I would like to personally thank each and every one of you for joining this celebration, for contributing. Your money is going to an extremely worthy cause. There is very few things as important as building the relationships between the various communities and building bridges between our community and the political and the law enforcement spheres, and securing our Jewish institutions. And these are the areas that the JCRC excels at. And we thank you so much for being so generous, both with your time and your money.